Okay, so the next topic here is withholding tax. So it's all about calculating the tax and holding from the invoice the tax amount with the same. I mean, if you are going to create the transaction, if withholding tax is applicable, system will create the separate invoice with the tax amount which we have to pay to tax authority. The concept and setups remain same as EBS. Of course, the concept always remains same. And when we talk about system configuration process, so it works same as EBS, but slightly they change the naming convention. Okay, what are the setups we do in EBS? Same setups will be doing, but here they change the naming convention. And if you remember EBS setups, the same will be executing. Slightly you can see the name difference. We'll see what setups required to implement withholding tax. So first what we have to do is we have to create tax authority as a supplier. Say create withholding tax authority as supplier. I have to create withholding tax authority as supplier, and in EBS we create special calendar, but that is not mandatory in all the cases in withholding tax. The same special calendar in Fusion we call as payables calendar. Just to go and define to understand, we'll create it. Otherwise, it's not mandatory. But let's include that as a part of withholding tax setup, even it is optional. So create payables calendar. Okay, as per EBS, this is special calendar. EBS we call as special calendar. Here we are calling as payables calendar. And in EBS, we go and enable withholding tax applicability and other options in payable options. Within the payable options, we can find one tab called as withholding tax. Under the tab, you give all the specifications where we apply withholding tax calculation for our operating unit. But here, instead of doing that setups in the relevant options in Fusion, we have a separate task called as withholding tax options. You can say configure withholding tax options. Okay, we have a separate task to set up withholding related setups. And after once we're done with that, we'll create tax codes. And after tax codes, we create tax groups. Basically in EBS, we create tax codes under tax groups. Here the same tax group name they are giving tax classification. Say create tax classification. It's nothing but tax group. If you compare with EBS, in EBS you could see as a tax group, but here for that the task name they given as a create tax classification. I mean they given name as tax classification instead of group. That's equal to group only. So in the setup process, in one place you can see classification, in another place you can see as a tax group. That's how they kept that information in the application. Now finally we have to assign this tax group, nothing but tax classification only. Okay. Assignment time they given as a tax group. Definition time they given as a tax classification. So anyway, as a part of setups, say assign tax group. Tax group is nothing but tax classification. Both are same. Okay. Assign tax group to our standard supplier. And done. These are the basic setups we have to complete. And once we are ready with these setups, okay, so when you create the invoice based on the triggering point which will be setting in the withholding tax options, you may set system has to calculate and create withholding tax at the time of invoice creation or payment creation. Accordingly, system will create the withholding tax invoice with withholding tax amount. So here we'll take that point what we will be testing. We'll create one standard invoice just as a, okay, and system will create System creates withholding tax invoice with tax amount. Okay, system creates withholding tax invoice with tax amount. So this is just we'll see this process. First we have to complete these setups, and after completing setups we'll create standard invoice. So since we are going to apply the tax group to the same standard supplier, which supplier will be using standard invoice, system will identify as tax applicability, and it will calculate and it will create the separate invoice. This invoice would be against the tax authority. We'll see that. Fine. First we have to create withholding tax authority as a supplier. We know how to create the supplier. So apart from the definition, just we have to select supplier type as a tax authority. That's how system will recognize the supplier can be used in this process. We'll see that. We're using the user called as Google. So now we have to create the supplier. To create the supplier, navigation is within the navigator under procurement, right under procurement section. You can find the task called as suppliers. Just click on suppliers task and go to task list. Say create supplier. And provide the supplier name. Say Google withholding tax authority. Select relationship as a spend authorized and select tax organization type any one of the classification for organization. Say corporate. Say create. So here system created profile for this supplier. Now we have to select supplier type. So based on this selection only, system will differentiate the supplier is tax authority or standard supplier. Select supplier type as tax authority. Okay, and go to payments tab. You may set default payment method. Select, or else at least we have to set at site level. Save it. Go to addresses. Say create. So we can just define the address which can be used for site definition. So withholding tax address. The addresses belongs to which country? So US. Just you can fill these details and select postal code, and rest of field system will select. So what purpose we are going to use this address? Only payment, right? We never place orders to tax authority. So only purpose is remit to, right? Payment purpose that you can specify. Now you can say save and close. If you want to set payment method as a default at address level, yes, that we can do. That we can do more. Click on site, say create. Select address to create the site. The same address name system is defaulting as a site name. You can override, say withholding tax site. Just click on save. And go to payments tab. It's a defaulting and site assignments. Okay. So you can just you can click on add, or else you can click on auto create assignments. If you click on auto create assignments, so this user acting as a procurement for how many BUs, the same BU it will get default. If you have any centralized procurement related configuration, so which is a client BU, which is a build to BU, accordingly system will default. Now if you click on auto create assignments or BU, this BU will get assigned, this site will get assigned to this BU only. You can click on add and you can select, or else simply you can click on auto create assignments. Okay, done. Now go to invoicing tab. Here you have to specify invoice currency and payment currency. Okay, select invoice currency USD and payment currency also USD, and say save and close. Fine. So we created tax authority as a supplier. Okay, tax authority we created as a supplier. So this special calendar as per EBS in Fusion we are calling as payables calendar. It is not mandatory in all the scenarios which we deal with the withholding tax, but just for our understanding we'll go and create the payables calendar. So from the project or directly from FSM homepage you can search for payables calendar. You can go with this option, or we can do it from project. Payables calendar. Okay, click on go to task icon. Click on create. Name we can give withholding tax calendar. And we know in EBS, when you talk about special calendar, that can be used for 4 different purposes. One is withholding tax, and other options are recurring invoice and payment terms and key indicators. Now, what are the payables calendar we create? If the payables calendar for the purpose of payment terms, you can select calendar type as a payment terms. Other than payment terms, that can be for withholding tax or recurring invoice or key indicators, you have to select the purpose as general purpose. Only for payment terms you have to select payment terms. Other than that you have to select as a general purpose. That calendar can be used for any other concepts. It could be recurring or withholding or key indicators. Okay, now we are not creating the special calendar or say payables calendar for payment terms purpose. It's a general purpose. When you say general, it can be withholding or recurring or any other purpose. So period frequency, say monthly, that means system will create the periods automatically in this payables calendar. So how, just whatever the process we just seen for accounting calendar. For accounting calendar we have to specify the required inputs. Based on that, system creates accounting calendar. Same logic is applicable for this payables calendar also. Okay, specify period frequency as monthly. So system is, since it's a monthly, it's taking the total periods as a per year 12, and here you can give the starting date. So starting date you can say 1st Jan, and period name format, the month it should come in 3 digits. That's fine. Just say generate periods. Click on generate periods. Okay, system created periods for current month. If you want to add one more year, you can click on add year, or else say save and close. So this is how we can create the special calendar. Here we are calling as payables calendar. Fine, but anyway, it's not mandatory. We'll see. Okay. The next step is configure withholding tax options. Search for withholding tax options. Withholding tax options. So here is the task: manage tax reporting under withholding tax options. Okay, this setup is equal to the EBS payable options. Within the payable options, we find the tab called as withholding tax. Under that, what are the specifications we give? The similar specifications we provide through this task. Okay, manage tax reporting under withholding tax options. Just click on go to task icon. Okay, so since we navigated to this task by selecting the scope, already scope is selected as a part of project, so system is defaulting our business unit, and here you have to specify. So withholding tax creation should be applicable for which event class, which transaction invoice type, say standard invoice. So here by default system is enabling apply withholding, process transaction taxes, allow manual withholding. All this system is defaulting. The point to calculate the withholding tax is invoice creation. So tax invoice creation point is invoice. That means system will calculate the withholding tax at the time of invoice creation. Whatever the tax is calculated with the tax amount, system will create the withholding tax invoice also at the time of invoice creation. Okay, the system is taking all the defaults. If required, we can change, or else we can proceed with the same. Select start date, then say save and close. Okay, so that's how we have to specify. Now we have to create the tax code. We'll go and create the withholding tax code. Search for tax codes. So manage tax codes, nothing but manage withholding tax codes. Click on go to task icon. Okay, say create. When you compare with EBS tax code definition, it is slightly different. Here when you create the withholding tax code, you have to specify the tax regime also. We'll see those points here. Okay, so this tax code we want to use in which business unit? Select RBU, the Google US business unit. The tax code definition we want to give for which country? Because here we are going to create the tax regime, so that is the reason we have to provide this country information also. Select country, then tax regime code. It comes under which tax regime? If already you implemented fusion tax, nothing but EBT as per EBS, so that you can select, or else we can create our own tax regime for withholding tax. Click on create. It's a very simple definition. Say Google withholding tax regime. The same name you can take. Start date is today's date. So save and close. So now system will select